let's move on to the last topic of the day, shall we? Let's talk about overproducing, because I think this is something that people struggle with, and I struggle with it. And I feel like people are going to have a lot of different perspectives on this. And I think it might be a good time to bring back up a conversation someone else mentioned, which was like, I think it was even Flux who brought it up, who was talking about, like, you know, over time, music or melody writing has gone more simplified. People seem to be quote-unquote struggling to write more melodies, which I can appreciate that idea. It feels like it's harder to write good music nowadays, and I think there's a few factors for that. So, for example, if a melody has already been used, that kind of makes it harder to reuse. Now, obviously, you can reuse whatever melody you want when you want to write it in your own time. Under legal copyright laws, you can't quite. Legal copyright laws is kind of redundant, but under copyright laws, you can't quite do that all the time. But a melody is a melody is a melody. It's a sequence of notes, it's a pattern. So if we hear a pattern too much, it gets cliche. It's the same reason why a 5-1 is a bad thing, technically, even though it's not. But using a 5 chord going to a 1 chord feels a little bit cheesy, especially depending upon your genre. So, when it comes to overproducing, I think it's good to talk about the development of music on a historical level, and also to talk about complexity as a concept, not just as a thing. Like, what is complexity? How do we define it? How do we explain it in music? And when I think about this subject, when I think about overproduction or overproducing a song, the first thing my mind goes to is there's too many different areas of complexity for that song. Now, when I look at complexity for music, I look at it in terms of the different qualities a song can have. Its rhythm, its harmony, its melody, from, for me at least, a vocal or a lyrical perspective. The song's structure, the song's instrumentation, the song's texture or timbre, the different sounds and how they add together. The mix down and the master, in some ways, can also contribute to complexity. But the further you go into one territory, the more you start to create a unapproachability to your music. And I don't think unapproachability is inherently bad. I think if you want to make music that's not for everyone, more power to you, friend. Go for it. Have fun with it. Make the music that you like. But consequently, the more complexity you have in different areas of your music, that unapproachability grows on an exponential level. This is one of the reasons why children's music tends to be highly simplistic to adults, because it removes all that complexity. It sounds very childish because it's simple. Ba ba, black sheep, have you any wool? Yes sir, 3 bags full. That's the simplest possible thing for every aspect of making a song. We've heard the human voice before. We've heard that 1-4-1-5-1 progression before. We've heard that call and response before, exactly as it exists. And no, I am guilty of it too. I think it is in many ways a sign of exuberance, so to speak. It's a sign that you are excited to do something, whether it's to prove yourself, whether it's to show off, or whether it's to express yourself. I'm glad that you want to show something. I'm glad that you have excitement, because excitement leads to curiosity, and curiosity leads to growth. So, the example I gave before we started this topic was, if I have a big complex sound, like a dubstep bass. It has all this LFO motion on it. It has a lot of distortion on it. It has this very formanty vowel on it. If that thing's like wow, 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 blah, 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 it sounds kind of cheesy, right? I think we've all encountered this, where you've heard a song where there's like a chord and then there's a dubstep bass for whatever reason, and then the dubstep bass is just following the chord progression, and just by the virtue of it doing that, it feels kind of cheesy. And then on the other end, if you have something that has this really tight, complex motion and it's changing all the time, it just sounds weird and frankly bad, because it's hard for the listener to identify that. And there's some reasons that could be. Now, we watched a video on, I think, last Tuesday, or this Tuesday. I think it was this Tuesday, or no, it was either this Tuesday or last Tuesday, where we had a React stream. Maybe it was Sunday, and we watched the Andrew Huang video on how you can understand the harmonic overtone series. I strongly recommend it. It's a really good video. But one of the things that he shows is one of the things that we talked about earlier with just intonation. So let me just go ahead and get Ableton open up, and we'll hop back to the desktop and I'll show this off. But there is a synthesizer inside of Ableton called Operator. It's a very simple FM synthesizer. It has a little bit of additive processes involved, but at its core, it's just an FM synth. Uses the same sort of thing that Serum and Phaseplant does for its wavetable processing. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab Operators. If I click this oscillator tab, you can see that when I go to 16, we have all these different little bins that I can scroll through. You can see it changes the sound down here if I play it. It just goes up the harmonic series. Right? So now, let's just add in the first few over time. I'm actually going to ignore that one because I don't think we need it. Ooh. Bum, bum, bum. If I turn this off. Sounds like the major chord. You can see these harmonics. It's a major chord. Boom, bum, bum. If I turn this back down. Whoops. Same as. But a little bit higher up, obviously. So, if we can see that as we add these in, we get a tone of a chord. Watch what happens when I play them now as one sound. It doesn't really sound like a chord anymore. It doesn't sound like a chord. It sounds like a sound, even though we can still grab. We can still get that chord when we hear it, but our ears are not hearing that in the moment. We're hearing the overall sound. Now imagine if I tried to play a chord. Now imagine if I had a lot of these subtler chords in the sound. It starts to get kind of complex. Now, imagine if I started to introduce more tones. Now imagine if I started to automate the volume of that secondary oscillator. Yeah, it feels kind of weird, to me at least. Your unison's going wide. Yeah, it feels kind of weird when these things start moving, because if you think about this, right? This chord is in our ears as harmonics. Now we have to add that in with this other chord. So now we have two sets of quote-unquote harmonies to deal with. The actual harmony of our chord progression and the harmonics of the sound itself. So if you're making a big crazy dubstep bass, maybe just keep it on one note, because it has so much motion it can't afford to have all those changes. And that's like my big thing with overproducing. It's you're going too far in so many directions. Another form of overproducing that I definitely get into all the time. I do this all the time. I even did it in that song I showed off, and that's just because I like the way it sounds. Going in here, doing this. Now, I'm sure for some of you this is not necessarily overproducing, but I do this a lot. This is actually an integral part of my sound design. It's just going in and just chopping off all of these little things as I get close to the end of a section. And just sort of, I love that. I love that. I love the way that sounds personally. But I know that can overproduce a track for sure. That can definitely overproduce a track. Honestly, for me, when I see like this, like, honestly, for me at least, a great sign of overproducing is this. If I see this, or usually the way I see it is like, something like this. I've seen this before, and like, why push it up here if you're gonna push it down here? Now, if there's other processing in here, it might be necessary, but I have seen people who, without really changing the tone of a sound, push up the frequencies in one place, and then later on down the line, just remove those frequencies. For me, that's overproducing, because you know what you could have done? That. Same exact thing. Same exact thing for me. No, that's the thing. I've done it before. Anything that I say is stupid, just assume that if I say it is stupid, I have myself done it before. That's the only time I ever say something is stupid, is when I've done it in the past and have realized for myself it's stupid. Another thing that I think of as personally overproduction is when you spend 10 hours on a single kick drum. Like if you're the kind of person who does this, whoops. there's a chance you might be overproducing just a little bit. Just a little bit. Now, there are times when I would say, like, this is necessary. And that's the weird part. Sometimes it can be necessary to do something, but the more of these things you find yourself doing in one song, the more likely you are to be overproducing that track. And, you know, on a more philosophical level, for me, when you cannot simplify the song down to some sort of core element, you've probably overproduced it. Like, for most songs, I can clearly define one thing that, like, makes that song, right? If I go to, for this is actually a really good one. I don't even have to play this song for you to know the main thing for this song. I mean, there's a few different ones. There's the melodic motif, and then there's the vocal motif, which are two slightly different things. But the moment I play the song, you hear bum, 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 bum. And then you just go bam, bam, bam. And the whole song completely warps around that one riff. Exactly. So there's things about this song that you're going to be able to really connect to. A lot of these songs, same sort of thing. Freak on a Leash has really clear motifs. Bodies has a really clear motif. In all of these examples, if I didn't have those things and I had some sort of melodic and rhythmic device, could I make your song? Or could I make some sort of impression of your song? Now, with genres like dubstep, that's going to be harder. But honestly, you are totally capable, in my opinion, of reducing a lot of dubstep songs into a rhythmic motif, right? Even if it's just the mouth noises you make. Like, let's go with Time Bomb by Recoil. Really fun tune. Let's think about what in this drop we could try and replicate with something tonal and something percussive.
This is a time bomb.
Bum 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 bum. Like, I don't even have to listen to the rest of the song to notice all of these rhythmic ideas, the things that help you connect closer with your musical idea. When you move away from that, when I can no longer go away from your song and identify that one thing, there's a good chance that I have completely lost the idea, and you may have overproduced the song. Like, another good example. This is one of the most iconic examples from me in bass music of a motif that carries the entire song. I love this song, by the way. Like, just
The bass cannon kick it.
bam. Like, that's literally just like, that is the song. Bam, bam, bam. Like, and it's like, it's primal. It's not complex. It has so much texture in that bass. The melody's simple. The bass is complex. That really pulls the song forwards. I can just go anywhere. I can go, let the bass cannon kick it, bam, and like, everyone's gonna know, everyone's gonna feel it and grow through that sound. And No matter what the genre you pick, there's gonna be something that you can identify. So just focus in on that, and then you should be fine. I guess beyond that, the only other thing I could really look at, I feel that certain styles of music lean into higher levels of production. Let's take, for example, Big Room House. I think it's actually really easy to overproduce Big Room House because it's a genre that expects a core idea, and you want that to carry over everything else. You could look at a genre like rhythm, for example, where again, the rhythmic complexity or the melodic complexity comes in, and you need to isolate that one thing out. Big Room House is quite the name. Oh yeah, Big Room House. Well, I mean, it's like, let's look at like the OG Big Room House. I mean, I don't think this is the OG Big Room House, but we all know. You really want to overproduce this song? Rip VOD friends, by the way. I'm sorry if you're watching this on the VOD. You can't hear what the fuck I'm saying. Wait, hold on. Couldn't miss the Pride of Snare. Forgot about that part. But let's compare Animals by Martin Garrix with Animals as leaders. Like, this type of music expects more complexity. Let's look at a genre that is even more overproducing safe. All these textural details, little things, and thing right there, and thing right there. Now, for some genres, this would probably be overproduced. For this genre, you need that. That's the texture. And even then, for all of these examples, think about it this way. For all of these examples, you can still identify the one thing that makes that song unique, that makes that song that song. You can still find its heart or its soul or whatever you want to call it. And that stuff is where context becomes the king. I mean, context is always king, in my opinion. As you go through your catalog of music, start to ask yourself questions like, compare everything we've heard with this. I love this shit, by the way. Like, what is even going on in half of these moments? This is exactly like those stutter things. Everything that I've talked about, this song does. But could this song exist without all of that stuff? Like, could you make this without overproducing it? Like, there's just so much happening in this, but it's still so clearly definable what this song is. I can look at this song, I can listen to the song, and I can tell that's what's happening. That's what's going on in this piece of music. If I can't have that, it doesn't matter how many layers of fucking serum bases you add in. It doesn't matter how many fucking patches of silence you use. It doesn't matter how many OTTs you stack on top of it. If there isn't a song that is left over that I can pull out of your piece of work, there's a really good chance you've overproduced it. So that's why I call this a dialogue, because I don't want this to be just my opinion. And people have made some comments, which I've really appreciated. For me, overproduction is essentially a state of being, not a list of traits. I personally could not I could not point to a thing and be like, okay, so these are the laundry list things you check off, that you have this, you have this, you have this, you have this. Okay, your song's overproduced. But if you have this thing and this thing, maybe this thing, but they're all added together, and then you're having this thing right here, then maybe we could start to get to a definition. It's kind of like pornography. I could not define pornography for you, but I know it when I see it. But I think that might be a good way to wrap things up. We have just broken 7 hours on the stream. So we're going to find someone to rate. If anyone has any questions about this, any other input, please give it in. This video might be going up on YouTube, and if it's going up on YouTube, then everything you write will be on the YouTube. Please don't take advantage of that. Please, 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 please be nice. Please be nice. Please be nice. Please don't make me regret saying that, because otherwise this video won't go up on YouTube, and I'll have to put a big block over it, and that'll make me sad. But if you have any questions, any comments, if you have other topics for next week, I would ask that instead of posting them in chat, post them in the suggestion box in my Discord.